figure out how he could have won that. It was knight to g1 in the end instead of king d2, but he had 3 seconds to find it.
But look at them, Danya. I mean, you see Hikaru, he's dancing once again, and it looks like Hans, he is just beside himself.
It was a tale of one night, but it's a tale of 2 expressions. Hikaru, he did that against Alireza. We got a little taste of that. Hans just got a big taste of that right here, and that was a game he needed to capitalize on.
And this could be one of those match-changing games. Hikaru was already in the lead. He was the heavy favorite. But if you look at Hans's face, he is furious at himself to let that game slip. But it's really a testament to the strength of Hikaru Nakamura. He has won the Speed Chess Championship 5 times for a reason. He's a 4-time Bullet Chess champion. He's won the U.S. Championship in Classical Chess 5 times. Official Random World Championship to boot. You can't say enough about his accolades. And it's because he can defend positions just like that, where most of us, I would have resigned. What, knight f5 check? Are you kidding me? That kept him in the game.
No, that move, I mean, you could have given me an hour, and to preemptively give up, you're like, here, you have it, and then to draw that position, I'm shocked that they're still using the mice that we started with, because that's why they didn't invite me to the SEC. That mouse would have been across the border in, like, I don't know, some other European country. But Hans needs to keep his composure. He can't let this lead balloon to 5, because we know that that is a path of no return against Hikaru. D3. Speaking of a pass deep on, Hans loading it up here.
Yeah, that's actually really annoying because you can't play rook d1 as the bishop on h5 covers that square. So queen d2, getting out of that tempo, gaining move with d3. But then at some point, f4, you're pointing out, f4 and g4, knight to f5. This is the type of position that Hikaru has long loved, and d3 was a natural move.
Bad. Takes an f4.
As you said, take an f4, and where is that knight going? Is it really going back to g6? That looks ugly. Your bishop on h5 is trapped, so you can't do that. And if you go back to d7, you just drop the d3 pawn.
And the problem is black has what's called pseudo-activity. It looks like your pieces are good, but they're just getting pushed away. They're getting swatted like flies. Queen d4 check, no problem. King's going to move, and the knight's going to jump to f5, pushing the queen away. Hans is, I wouldn't say this was a tilt game. I think he overestimated his activity. Knight g6, you could play knight takes g6, and black will have to recapture with the bishop, and there will be no bishop after f5.
Yeah, there's not much to say in that variation. And the players, you could see Hikaru, he is really happy right now because that match could have changed. We saw when Hans won the penultimate game of the longest time control, he then won the final one. And then in that position, Hans had an objectively won game, and he probably thought it was so simple. And yet Hikaru continues to bring the tricks. There are no tricks here. White is just playing f4. If the knight retreats to d7, you drop d3. As you mentioned, if you drop to g6, you lose a piece. So this just looks really bad for black, and easy plus for Hikaru right now.
It almost looks losing, and bishop e2 there was a way to give up the 2 pieces for a rook. Hans, I think, probably makes the right decision, all things considered. That's a depressing move to have to make. And the worst thing is you still have these problems with your bishop. They can be solved with f6. That opens a whole new can of worms. That white knight, it's just waiting to jump into f5.
Knight f5, knight d6 ideas are in the air. You could even play g4. I know it exposes your king a little bit, but you want to get a rook to d1 at some point. So this is something to consider as, you know, avalanche of pawns. But maybe there is just rook e1 and pawn to e5, things like that.
What about e5, f takes e5, f5? Hikaru might be feeling it here. He is feeling it, but he jumps to f5. Rook to d1 contesting the d file. I mean, he's got a whole menu of options here. Trade and queen f2 hitting the knight.
Okay, there is some g5 stuff that you have to look out for. I know it looks very risky, but you might need to try it if you feel like queen.
Well, of course. I mean, obviously. We didn't need the blue air. We knew that. Who does it think we are? I mean, amateurs?
The queen going to the other side of the board, not expected. The rook comes to d2. So Hans is actually giving himself chances, and e5 is played. G5, it's a move that we talked about, right? It's something that you can consider if you're Hans. But as you look at the current position, that white knight wants to go into d6. The f-file is now open, but that rook on d2 for black is really active, and that's causing Hikaru to pause a little bit.
And g5 there, if you could put a knight on f4, it would justify it, but the knight from f5 could have dropped into h6 with a fork. Hans, again, he's shown a lot of resilience, a lot of skill defending what seem like hopeless positions, but it's taking him a lot of time to find these good moves. And at some point, it doesn't matter how well you've defended or how long you've defended. What does Hikaru do? Does he drop into d6? Does he move his king out of the pin?
Just plays h5, but he gives black that g5 square for the pony. So in some positions, you're happy to establish that knight there. And Hikaru has said that the best move played slowly is often worse than a good move played quickly, right? Like, you just got to move sometimes. And right now, Hans, you know, he's moving, but he's down a full minute. He's also down a pawn, and he has activity. He's got some pins going along, but Danya, there's a protected pass pawn on e6.
There is indeed, and wow, he's down a pawn, but he might not be down a Hans.
Wait, what was that? He just gave up his pawn.
A protected pass pawn on e6? What you were talking about? Donuts?
It was quite
pawn.
That was really surprising, and now if you are hikaru, you have to be really careful because there is a knight on a dark square. You can't compete for the dark squares. A2 is loose. Danya, Hans can turn this one around.
That was f6 was crazy because not only did he hang upon on e6, Hans could have even taken on f6 and played king e7. I mean, hikaru is the master of sitting on his advantage. This is a huge chance for Hans. I mean, a2 is hanging. Rook f2 is a scary move to play. He plays it, but Black's got the edge here because the h-pawn has advanced very far. Black's king is more active. We know how jumpy these knights can be.
And bishop e8, so he's trying to force those black pawns forward, but the black pawns on dark squares can't be targeted. I guess if you can keep this king on e3, you're feeling happy about your position. You keep the opposition, but this looks really risky. Danya, if the clocks were reversed, I would say Hans was definitely winning this game. I still feel like Hans should win this just based on the knight just hopping all over the board.
You're exactly right. It's probably a draw, but Hans can play this forever. He can jump to any part of the board, creating threats. And eventually, hikaru is going to let the knight access a square that he wasn't supposed to let it access. Apparently, there's a win here. And apparently, Hans is about to find it. Bishop g6.
King d4.
Oh, that knight deserves a medal for what it's doing right now.
Knight f6 looks great. King d4 can also be played. And
Division of labor.
Yeah, now knight d6, c4 drops. And the white king is way too slow going after the h-pawn.
I don't know, but hikaru's kings can kind of look like Ferraris, and...
Uh-oh. The king is going after the h-pawn. Look at 12 seconds for black.
Knights suck.
Oh, my goodness. And he takes it. Is he going to win? He's going to win.
He's going to promote with check.
Hikaru is going to win
Don't go
this game.
king g7 because that lets the knight access f5. Is
Wow.
the winning move king g6, Robert? Is it king g5?
Let's see. He's calculating. You see, look at him on screen. He is
Both
hovering.
moves win.
Both moves are winning. He plays king g6.
No.
And this is unbelievable.
No, but to go for the a-pawn when it was clear that the h-pawn was falling, that is just a mindless decision by Hans. He's going to lose this game, but you still have to convert this. Knight and pawn versus queen can be tricky, Robert.
But in
a2, he's allowed. No, a2, queen g8.
Okay, so where's king b3? So the king is actually going to hide in enemy territory. And how do you win this now?
Well, hikaru had a chance to put the queen on a2, and that would have completely paralyzed any further chances the black had. Now he can't get the queen a2 anymore.
So he's going to keep giving a bunch of checks. We're going to have to keep an eye on the 50-move rule if no pawns or captures are made. But the a2 threat forces him to keep giving these checks.
Hans does not deserve to lose this game, so I think he's earned a draw here. But people assume that as long as the pawn isn't on a2, it's winning. Not so fast.
Oh,
he's allowed queen a2 again! And he missed it again.
But he's still winning because his king is so close.
Oh, my gosh. But how do you win this?
Queen a4,
Zig and Zag,
king d3.
Finally.
Oh my goodness, and Hans is just so upset with himself right here. Hikaru Nakamura steals a game from the jaws of defeat.